It's funny, we're playing West Coast and we're up by 4 goals and then lose that game. Last week was as bad a performance as I've seen.
2 weeks ago, we're coming up a really good win against the Tigers, and after another good win against Carlton in the state. So we thought we were on the right track.
This week we play in spits and spurts. It's just amazing. Confidence is a very, very funny thing within AFL. You can quickly gain it, you can quickly lose it.
Thought we had the right attitude on the travel, trained well. Thought the Grammars really looked after us with their facilities. There's been good spirit, just poor execution.
Look, our group are very proud. We're the first to admit we're not playing anywhere near the level of capacity we think we can, and we've got to get better in a lot of facets of our game.
Yeah, we're going to make sure we own today. We take responsibility for it, and we'll do everything we can to get better.
Yes, the last 4 Premiership Cups have been won by these two teams. But across round 16, they both looked to have fallen apart. It seems we'll have a different Premier other than the Eagles and Tigers come September 2021. Just who that will be is the exciting story that will unfold over the next few months. Hello, welcome along to On the Couch. We're one big man down, so the challenge to you two gentlemen is to lift and fill the breach. And Gary, you've got the toughest job. You're not only in John O'Brown's spot, you're in Mike Sheehan's hallowed position as well.
It's an honour and a privilege, Michael. He'll be watching tonight. Don't worry. Looking forward to Nick's a long way away.
He's got Mike Sheehan's shirt on, by the way.
It'll be a bigger shock if those two teams get up and put themselves back in contention. They were shocking results, shocking in execution, but shock to the system to see Richmond go down, after the 2-goal performance the week before, and then that West Coast performance, when was it, yesterday?
Were you surprised by the soundbite there from Adam Simpson? So he spoke about the week. So he spoke about we travelled well, we trained well.
He'd be as shocked as anybody.
We seemed like we were up for it, but we just didn't execute. Is that...
I don't think they had it.
Shocked by that statement?
Yeah, I didn't think it was I think execution came down the list of issues that they
Or is he saying that we didn't execute in terms of our effort and our application?
Well, that would make more sense because there was no effort. I mean, we'll talk through it in the manner that we do, but this is a side who have been so proud and they represent their state so beautifully and so well. And round 6 they were at that same ground, Jared. Round 6, same ground, 97 point. Absolutely embarrassed and learnt nothing.
I thought there was really interesting vision of Adam Simpson. He'd be flummoxed right now. He'd be challenged more than he was even in his premiership year. He'd be disappointed in what he's seeing. He'd be disconsolate. He'd be looking for answers. He'd be challenging himself. I mean, it must be a lonely time, even for someone with a premiership under their belt, someone who's been as successful as Adam Simpson right now, with what he saw as an embarrassing performance by his group.
Yeah, I mean, these are pretty compelling pictures, I think, for a coach to...
That's the siren's gone long ago.
That's right. So he's still sitting there. I mean, he's trying to process it. He's trying to figure it out. So clearly at a loss as a coach, and it's a difficult thing to say about a side that so recently won a flag and has been in contention. They were in contention that year, obviously, and they won it, but they've dropped off a little bit since. We talk a lot about their record away from home and how they are just two completely different teams. They didn't handle the hub last year by their own admission. Is it fair now, given their struggles away, anytime they seem to leave the state, is it fair to question their mental toughness right now as a group? You couldn't question it when they won the flag.
Let's have a look at the vision immediately after this. So he goes and makes his way down the rooms, Jared, and then it's... Don't worry about sitting down. Just get straight in here. And these, we're not privy to what went on, but they'll be the questions that.
Well, what would you be asking?
Well, every right to ask.
Him.
Well, I think they're a picking and choosing team right now.
Okay.
And I reckon that's an indictment on a side with as much talent as this. Yeah. I think they pick and choose. So, and they chose not to play in the manner that would have them competitive against Sydney.
So you just answered my question there. Yeah. So picking and choosing means you don't have the mental toughness to deliver great effort week in, week out consistently, which is what great teams do.
So let's go back. Round 6, 97 points against Geelong at that ground, right? So you have your most humiliating, embarrassing performance at that ground. So you're back at the same ground. What do you think the build-up was? What do you think the talk was? What do you think the tactical issues about what they learned from a 97-point drubbing and then they come out and serve that up.
Well, I think the one thing that Adam Simpson wouldn't have thought he had to worry about was attitude. And right now, he has got every member of the touring party into the small coaches box. And he has, I've got no doubt, asked some questions, but he would be laying it on the line saying, we're either in the race, boys, or we're not in the race. And if you don't want to be here, put your hand up, because we've got some kids. They dropped half a dozen kids over the last few weeks, and he may just have to make a statement and put some young blokes in. But there was a challenge there that would have been laid to them during the week. Let's get some retribution, some atonement. And they doubled down on a stinker.
Yeah, and there's so much vision you could have taken out of this game. I sat and watched the game like everyone on the couch, and I saw this bit of vision from a guy I rate as highly as anyone else, Oscar Allen. And dude, watch this. The ball's there. He looks at it. He looks at either Fox or he looks at Kennedy and then doesn't get anywhere. And then you've got Shannon Hearn, who's been a terrific leader of this club. There's Buddy Franklin. You know where the ball's going. You're nowhere there. You're not up, you're not back, you're just nowhere. So, and that's apart from all the other execution issues and the way they play and the style and all that. That just says to you.
Remember last year, Gary, you had a big go at Melbourne. They had a stinker. It was a non-competitive effort, but it showed about 4 weeks later it was a bit of a one-off, and they used that as a rebound. Now, you can't give them a one-off mulligan because they produced one about in round 6. But is it such a long season and is it such a taxing season that we've just got to get used to clubs having absolute shockers? Because Richmond are having an absolute shocker, and we'll get to them in a minute.
Well, I don't know. Answer me on the back of this, Nick. You answer that question that Jared has put. When you see this, do you then say, oh, it's an aberration and we'll give them not a mulligan, but it's a sign of the times and it's the season we're in? Because you'd have to put a lot of faith in them to bounce back. When you look at this and see how Buddy waltzes down the field on the back of...
this is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing vision. There's 4 or 5 of them that get goal side. So to answer your question, Gary, so aberrations, mulligans, I think they're real. I think they are real now. I mean, we spoke in the build-up to the Geelong game on the weekend about Geelong's previous week against Brisbane and the fact that they look flat, they look tired, and I think the challenges that are getting thrown at players with the travel, with the COVID restrictions and the different sort of build-ups that they're being exposed to, I think we have to accept that. But I think with West Coast, the difference between their ability to play at home and to take on the challenge of interstate travel and hubs, and it is the biggest gap in the competition. But it's not just that. I mean, it's the proof is in what we're actually seeing on the field in the way they're playing. They can't move the ball. They're the worst ball movement team in the competition. They can't stop it. They're 17th for efficiency when it goes inside their defensive 50. Teams score, and they can't win it. They're ranked 17th in ground ball differential, which is around the ground. So can't move it, can't stop it, can't win it. They're 3 pretty big variables.
And they've got a really old list.
They've got massive issues.
So right now they've got to make hay while the sun shines. And they've still got super talent at the top end, but they've got so many older players that this window is going to close pretty rapidly.
Yeah, there's a fragility about that, though, that when Gaff goes out of the side, they looked absolutely impotent in terms of ball movement. Ryan not playing, their forward pressure's virtually non-existent. We've spoken about, sometimes we look at it and go, are they too tall? So that's all eggs in the one basket. Therefore, your ground ball stuff suffers, your ability to move the ball suffers.
Well, there's the run home, guys.
Then you say, can they turn it round? And the silly thing is that they can.
Yep.
They can turn it round. And this is the sort of season we're having. They go back to Optus Stadium against a much improved North Melbourne side, Adelaide, St Kilda, Collingwood. They'd start favourites in all those games.
I think the really difficult situation for Adam Simpson is to assess how much of it is style and how much of it is attitude, because it's impossible to measure your own system that has served them very, very well.
Yeah. So we're talking more attitudinal stuff, whereas the boys the other night talked more about style, and the style is a real question as well.
We put that on the agenda last week.
But I think that's a 100%. Difficulty for Simpson is how do you measure your style when the attitude's not right?
You're going to change it round 16?
Well, it's probably too late now.
It is, isn't it? So then you've got to get back and start convincing them again that it'll stand up and work if you can bring attitude and bring the competitive instincts that, there'd be some embarrassed senior players from that group, and that's okay. We've all had shockers like that, but that was bad, and we haven't even started talking about Sydney of how good they were.
No, we'll get to Sydney later on, but let's have a chat about the Tigers, because the Tigers have got premierships in their belly. And Ben Dixon on the weekend said they had full bellies. In fact, it was Nick Del Santo, full bellies. But I think the greatest shock about the Tigers was that it followed an impassioned, almost announcement from the coach just prior to the game.
We sort of spoke, and probably giving a little bit away, but we sort of spoke about this week as the most important week of our season. The preparation, the conversations that we had have been really important. Getting a real good understanding of what our DNA is and what we look like again is going to be really prevalent, hopefully, tonight. So, you know, once again, we've got to make a run for it for the back end. Once we make finals, if we make finals, anything can happen.
Well, Dimmer put the D word on the table, the DNA, and I think we've all been in awe of what they've been able to do. Nick, you've been one of their greatest public supporters, but the DNA fell apart on the weekend.
Yeah, it did. So you put it on the line as the most important game so far of your season, and the pressure differential, which is an effort stat, really. Yeah. I mean, if a side wants to kick mark against you, that makes it more difficult to put pressure on. But we know Richmond, they don't concede marks. They make it so difficult for the opposition to move the footy. So that would be a really disappointing stat. But I thought there were alarm bells right from the very start of the game. So you talk about the Richmond DNA. So it's a poor inside 50. OK, that's fine, you turn it over. But then watch Tuke Miller. So he runs past one. He runs past another one. This is 2 minutes into the game. So let's look at the score and the time.
The most important game of the year.
Yep. He runs past another one that has no interest in going with him, and then he runs past another one that has no interest in defending and getting goal side. So straight away, Gold Coast have moved the ball from one end of the ground to the other and they scored. But that's secondary, I thought, to the attitude to pick up the Gold Coast prime mover who's able to waltz past a number of Richmond players and alarm bells. When you talk about Richmond DNA, it doesn't look like that. And if that's your biggest game of the year, I think you'd be embarrassed with that effort. Yeah,
so that doesn't change until you lose your sense of entitlement, Jared and Rui. So there's been a sense of entitlement about them that has been well earned and that they've cashed in on 3 times in 4 years. And we take our hat off to them and say, you're one of the best teams we've seen. They still have the sense of entitlement. So 2 weeks ago, you know, it was, you look at the run home. They got their easiest run home here. It was St Kilda, Gold Coast. Well, two down, it's Gold Coast gone, St Kilda gone. So not until you drop your sense and say, well, now, we don't get handed games. We don't get handed it because we're on the back of 3 premierships before. We have to go back and win it again. It won't change. And sometimes it gets away too much. And I suspect they're going to get back and they'll be competing in finals footy again. And then that whole narrative around, well, watch out, you know, wait till they get there, because when they get there, you know, that's the entitlement. Now, how deep it goes into the actual 4 walls of Richmond, you can't tell. But I reckon there's been a little sense of that we'll be right. We'll beat St Kilda, we'll beat Gold Coast, we'll beat Collingwood. Then we've got a test against Brisbane and Geelong. Well, let's just deal with what's in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, Collingwood have been poor, really poor on the weekend, so you give them a tick. But after that, there's challenges. And if they played even halfway as bad as that on the weekend, they'll struggle to beat all of those sides the way that the last ninth of the footy season can play out. And
the challenges now are probably greater for Damien Hardwick. So he's got to re-engage his group, because clearly they're off from a hunger point of view at the moment. And he's got to do it with a lot of soldiers missing. So you have a look at the injury list here. I mean, it is really significant now, and every team deals with it. But just, I think players like Nankervis, like Bolter, Vlosten, there's a real defensive bent, I think, to a lot of those guys that are missing. I mean, Edwards, his ability to run defensively for a mid is some of the best in the competition. So it is as difficult as it's been for them over the past 5 years, but I just still think deep within this group somewhere...
You're not writing them off.
The pilot light's still on, Jared. Right. The pilot light is still on. They've got to find a way. Dimmer and the leaders within that group have got to find a way to light it.
Dimmer's been like that bloke that... Like he got no idea how to fix anything. In the middle of the night, he's just been pushing the damn light, saying, get the hot water back on, for God's sake, and it hasn't. So what he said before that game last week was telling. This is the most important, and the response, I think, would have been as instructional for him as anything. He'll go back to coaching him hard again. I reckon he's had the great faith, which he should have, because they're so great.
You earn that, don't you?
Yeah, you've earned that. You're entitled to have the faith, and now we'll go, righto.
Pilot light on, somebody's got to provide the gas, and it's going to need more than a couple of players to do it.